what's good, fam? Welcome to another episode of the Feed Me, Fuel Me podcast. Durs and Jeff coming to you as usual. And today we've got the pleasure of sitting down with Leila Marrash.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
All due respect to your name, I want to make sure I got it right.
Yeah, no, you got it right. Perfect. Thank you.
So your sister's a member of the gym.
Yes.
And she was telling me about you one day with respect to your Reiki practice.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, I need that in my life. Put me in touch with your sister. And I was like, what up? Is she in the therapy realm like you are? She's like, no, not really. I was like, oh, so what does she do? And you do like 8,000 things, you know? And then she's like, oh, but she's also putting together this book. Yeah. I'm like, oh, I'm writing the book. Let's have a conversation. And so we had to sit down, and you told me about Reveal, and I'll let you dive into that in a second. This right here is extremely both impressive and powerful.
Thank you.
And it's all all based in your personal journey.
Yes.
Which is something that Jeff and I both really respect, because this is not a superficial project. There's so much of you in here, and you now have something physical and real to put out there in the universe that's gonna really make all who touch it better.
I hope so.
So massive props to you.
Massive.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
The project in and of itself took about 2 years, but it's been in the works for a decade.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. So how did you get here?
Oh, man. So, we were talking before, and it kind of started about 10 years ago. As an adolescent, I struggled with anxiety and depression really badly. And I think it was just this underlying just feeling of worthlessness, that whole idea of like just not loving myself enough, but I didn't really know where it was coming from. I just knew that I always felt really, really bad just underneath. I looked like a normal kid going to school and, had my friends and I had sports and all that, but there was just always this kind of like dark cloud. And so, I went through school, got through college and everything, and I had my trials and tribulations there. And then finally, after school, and I was kind of in the working world, the anxiety was still so bad that it was difficult for me to even hold down a job. Even though I had them, I would be, if I had to call out sick a number of times or I needed to work from home, it was really because I needed that time to just be with myself. Like I couldn't even get myself out of bed. So, at one point I was trying also at that point to figure out who I was and like what I wanted. And so finally I was doing a couple part-time jobs, and it just got to the point where I was like, Mom, Dad, like I got to do something and I got to figure this out. I got to get to the root causes of it. And so about 10 years ago, I came to Sedona, Arizona, and I did my own kind of self-directed spiritual retreat. And I met with healers here, and my cousin actually accompanied me out here. And things that I learned out here from the healers, just even the energy work we did, being away from cell phones and just distractions, people and everything. I was completely, in a lodge by myself, waking up with the sun, getting my rhythms back, and kind of getting in touch with my humanity and like who I was. All of a sudden I started to experience some things within myself that, and I say this in the book, that gave me this connection to things unseen, and just this energy and even a consciousness in myself, and this awakening. I think it was like a light bulb went on in my head that was like, whoa, there's something more, and you're part of this bigger thing, and you're worth something, and so the idea, as my thoughts became more clear and I started to get more focused, all of a sudden this idea popped in my head of like Reveal. I said, okay, I'm on this spiritual journey now. What is it that I'm actually trying to do? And I said, I'm trying to reveal myself to myself, and that word just popped in my head, and it was in big, bold letters, like all capitalized. And I was like, okay, if I'm trying to reveal myself, how do I do that? Like, how does somebody actually do that? And all of a sudden, with these big, bold letters in front of me, I started breaking them apart based on all the wisdom that I had collected over the years, books, quotes, and like all these gurus mentioning certain buzzwords, right? And then all of a sudden, I started pulling the word apart, and I said, okay, R, renew and rejuvenate. E, empower. V, value, E, express, A, acknowledge, accept, and appreciate, and then L, listen, love, let go. And I was like, it's all right there. That's the blueprint. So I was like, okay, I've got to do the work to make this authentic to me, and I've got to heal myself, but this is how I'm going to do it. This is going to be my blueprint. And so it was kind of like keeping these mental notes and jotting things down as I went on this journey myself. And then I'm like, okay, when I would talk to people and they were like, oh, so what are you doing? And I'd explain, you know, oh, I've struggled with anxiety and depression, but this is what I'm doing. They related to it and it resonated. I said, okay, if it's resonating with some people and it's worked for me, it's got to work for others.
Yeah.
And this book was really a way for me to get my thoughts down on paper, get it out of my head, and then be able to distribute it and hopefully help other people. Because the last thing I want to see are other people struggling with anxiety and depression the same way that I did, with nowhere to turn, no tools. I mean, we're all going to come up against our own struggles, right? We're human beings. We're all going to have some form of anxiety and depression. But I think what we need, and especially kids today, need tools to be able to work through the emotional stressors and the emotional pain, because our actions follow our thoughts and emotions, right? So how do we learn how to be aware of them? How do we learn how to control them, and then act in a more thoughtful way, as opposed to just constantly acting irrationally and emotionally and getting ourselves into all this trouble where we could have avoided it.
Yeah.
Sure.
You think back on when you guys were young, and I'm sure you were like, man, I was really stupid there and like totally emotional, and you know.
I think I had that thought. I think I had that thought yesterday. Right on.
So yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks.
So why Sedona?
I looked up a lot of different retreats all over the world. I looked at Bali, I looked at, Thailand, and everything was coming up. And then something about Sedona. I'm an energy person. I do Reiki and all the healing and stuff. And so I think just intuitively, I was like, there's something about Sedona. There's something about Arizona that's just drawing me. And it was also, at the time, it was cheaper than flying to Bali. So I was like, all right, I can handle this and I can do this. And I can take, 7 days off of work, or 5 days off of work and a weekend and do that.
Yeah.
So I was just drawn, I think, to the desert. I was just drawn to the mountains, the red rocks.
Yeah.
And it was funny because when I was there, something told me that I would be back at some point in my life.
Interesting.
And it's really weird how everything just kind of transpired to bring me back to this place, and to a place where I really feel like it's home.
Sure.
Like the moment I came back, I was like, this is where I can put roots down. So
how'd you get over that point as you're putting your thoughts and words to paper, like your story, and being able to share it with the world, essentially? Because it's like we can journal to ourselves and have these thoughts, but actually sharing it to the public and trying to help them, that's another a fearful thing. How do you get over that?
I don't even know if I'm totally over it right now. We were just talking before, and
you do understand this has been like 5 months in the works, right?
Oh, yeah.
Trying to get her in this seat, right? I'm not ready.
Yeah, Mike was just like, "You're coming. Are you ready for next week?
Right.
Are you ready next week?" I'm like, "Oh God." It's one of those things. I think I kind of tested it with friends. I tested it with other people, and I think through so many conversations, it's just what I was talking about resonated. Yeah. So I knew that this was information that was valuable to people. So it wasn't really a matter of whether or not the information that's in here would be, accepted and all of that. But it was more the personal story that I put in the beginning. Yeah. That's really talking about me. It's an abridged version of my life. But, there's always that fear of people judging you, and even people who know, especially for people who've known you, gone to school with you and everything. And then they look at this and they go, wait, what? Because, I don't know that any of us are totally authentic selves when we're young. We're still trying to figure it out. Yeah. So I think also one of the things was with my parents, even being able to write all this out, and, when you're going through all the struggles, the last thing parents want to see is their child struggling. And, they're always going to look themselves, did I do enough? Sure. And I didn't want to upset them, but I think we have such an open dialogue anyway, that they always knew where I was coming from. And one of the biggest things, kind of to get back to your question, was I found really early on in high school, when I started seeing psychologists, that when I talked about my issues, I felt better. When I bottled them up and when I was just trying to keep them quiet and unknown, that's when everything was like erupting in my stomach, and it would just cause me more anxiety. And then I felt like, everything, I was trying to contain everything. That's when it got worse. So for me, I always knew from that point on, like, I have to be open about it. I have to talk about it. And I realized by talking about it, you create the space for other people who might not have the confidence to talk about it to also open up and be vulnerable. And in doing that, I started making all these really authentic connections. And I found that the vulnerability, which you talked about the other day, the vulnerability, the authenticity there, you can connect with people. And this whole life is all about relationships. Whether you're talking about business, whether you're talking about your personal romantic relationships, when you're just talking about friendships, or just everyday people, it's all about relating. And it's just about putting yourself out there and being okay and standing in who you are, knowing that if you're talking about things with the best of intentions and with love and all of that, then there's no reason to fear what you're saying. Somebody might not agree with it, but that's none of your business. I mean, that's how they're filtering, and coloring it through their own experiences. So
we heard something at the campfire, and we didn't really talk about it in depth in that conversation, but Kyle said something really powerful, and he said you can have the right intentions and do it the wrong way and still come out okay, and I feel like that's so much of the process until you really decide what the right process is for you, is just making sure that your intent is a positive one and proceeding anyway. And I feel like so many people don't act because they're worried about proceeding with the right intention in the wrong way. But if you don't go through those stumbles and those hurdles, you never give yourself the ability to figure out what the right way actually is. So it's part of the process.
absolutely. I mean, my dad would always, he bought me a book years ago that was on perfectionism and like how to get outside of that. And because I'm a perfectionist. I always have been. I think that's part of my problem. And he said, what is it? The great is the enemy of the good, or something to that effect,
Good is the enemy of
the good is the enemy of the great. Yeah. And that was my thing. And I even write in the back of this where it says, my afterword is kind of a perfectionist delivers by letting go. And that was me finally just saying, it's good enough as it is. Because the same way that I was putting this off, I was putting this off and saying, wait, it's not perfect. It's not perfect yet. It's got to be perfect for it to be received right. And it was just my own way of thinking about how other people would see it. If it's not packaged perfectly, if it's not this, if it's not every word is written correctly, and what if, a million things going through my head. And then finally I was like, you know what? It is what it is. Like, this is me. I in the beginning, I say, look, try it on like a new article of clothing. If it fits, it fits. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It's my experience and advice. And, if it works for you, great.
Yeah.
So, I just had to kind of put it out there. And really, I've been driven by this mission. Something in me kept telling me, you have to write this. If if something stays with you for 10 years and doesn't let go, it's the universe telling you need to do something with this.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it just kept growing and growing. And no matter how many times I put it on the back burner, I think the periods that I had to do that were the periods where I needed to even internalize that portion of it.
Sure.
And I think every step of the journey that I took to reveal myself was me learning and becoming more authentic to be able to deliver the message that had to be delivered. And my mission, and I believe that everything that I went through, the reason that I struggled with anxiety and depression that I did, the reason that I was born in the family that I was, the reason that I've had the influences that I have had and the resources that have come to me to be able to produce this, is because this is what I'm supposed to produce. So fear, ego, all that has to go aside, because this is greater than me. Yeah. And I truly believe that Reveal the Realness. The book is only the first step. It is so much bigger than that, and I have plans to make that thing, more than that. But it's bigger than me. I can't deny it. So
Yeah.
You know, I can't be fearful.
That
I have
makes-
to go forward.
That makes perfect sense. So you mentioned you took the retreat to Sedona. You had the idea that you're going to come back to Arizona.
Yeah.
But go back to the East Coast. What was the moment where it all clicked, where you finally got back to Arizona?
That's really interesting. So I wasn't on the East Coast at the time.
Okay.
So I had for a short while. I've been in a on again, off again relationship for many years. I mean, really, it started back when I was 15, and it had been on and off for about 18 years. You know, well into my 20s, I guess even my early 30s. So at the time, we had, for a long time, it was distance, and then finally we were trying to figure it out. And I'd gone down to Tennessee to be with him, and we tried it, and it just, things transpired, and I think we just started growing apart, and we each had our own directions to go. So, after that, I remember for a while, I was working in a New York-based office. And so I would fly back and forth, and there was one particular time, and I had been feeling just kind of this thing inside of me saying, you've got to go a different way. And one time I was home visiting my parents so that I could be at work in the New York office. And I got on the train, and this was the commute. So it's about 45 minutes to the city, an hour and a half, during rush hour. And I can remember sitting there in the window seat, and somebody could have been screaming at me, literally sitting right next to me, but it was coming from inside, and it was like, get out, get out, get out, get out. And I was looking around like, is somebody literally yelling at me? Because it's so loud.
Yeah.
And I was bubbling up inside, and it was so emotional for me. And, finally there, a few things had just transpired, and I think we had both been feeling it coming for a while. And maybe myself, maybe me more so. And then I just said, this is not for me. I have to go in a different direction. And I don't think I always, I even knew, and I may have blamed it on certain other things. But in retrospect, I think he had been right about a lot of things. And one of them being, I just didn't love myself. As much as I could blame the relationship or him or whatever, it was all about me. And if I'm being 100% honest, it was me just manifesting everything that was happening in that relationship, because I wasn't true to myself. I wasn't being authentic at every step of the way. I didn't know myself. So all of the cycles we went through were probably of my own making. Maybe some partly on his too, but I have to go in and say, this was my part in all this. When you don't know yourself, when you're not authentic, it's going to play out in your relationships.
Sure.
You're going to repeat cycles, and especially you want to talk about soulmates and everything. People who come into your life and you have that real strong connection with, especially your soulmates, they're the ones that are going to challenge you the most. Those are those karmic relationships that are going to keep bringing up those patterns. And if you don't deal with your shit, it's going to keep showing itself up. It doesn't matter what person you end up in a relationship with. That relationship is going to be the same relationship time and time again, unless you do something to, change yourself.
That's what Jill Peterson was talking about on her podcast.
Right. Yeah.
In her conversation with us. It wasn't until she turned that energy inward that she was in bad relationship after bad relationship after bad relationship, and then she addressed all the shit that was wrong with her, and all of a sudden a new kind of guy shows up in her universe. It's
law of attraction.
And the guy, her husband, is like the exact opposite of all the quote unquote douchebags that she dated before that. You know what I mean? And so I think that it's extremely interesting that that same thing holds true elsewhere for somebody else walking a completely different path.
Totally.
Which leads us to your practice in Reiki. And I noticed as I was perusing through the workbook there, you have a section on the chakras.
Yeah.
And I know that's a huge part of the Reiki practice, but real quick education piece for people who don't know the difference between Reiki and then the energy work that goes into it. Explain to people what Reiki actually is.
So Reiki is really, the base level, it's energy healing. It's really the channeling of universal life force energy for the purpose of healing. And it's a hands-off practice. And the practitioner is really this vessel. They're supposed to act as a clear channel, no ego, no nothing, just to let the energy of the divine, come through you and be passed on to the client. Mm-hmm. And what it does is it works on the energy bodies. I mean, if and science is even starting to prove now, we are not just these masses, everything is energy. And like we said, our thoughts and feelings affect who we are and how we act, and even affect our physical makeup. Mm-hmm. You can see in brain scans now and everything, people who are meditating, difference in the way that their brains look. And so, there are rice experiments and water experiments where the way that people put positive energy towards those things, all of a sudden the molecules look different and they're prettier. And, so there is something to that. So what we're doing is really setting intentions for the individual, and it's really the individual who does the healing. If somebody who gets on the table is not open to receiving the healing, that means all their chakras are going to be closed, which are the energy centers, those pools that go through the center, along the center of your body. And then those are all going to be closed off, and you're not going to be able to receive the healing as well. But if somebody comes to the table and they're very open, and they're also setting the intention as the practitioner is setting the intention as well, then you might see some really significant healings.
Yeah, yeah. And it's not so much, it's not limited to the physical. Like, people can come see a Reiki practitioner such as yourself to diagnose and figure out what inside of them is inhibiting their momentum in a certain direction.
Well, we never want to diagnose anything or any,
No, I mean, like, it's a self-diagnosis. Like,
yes,
I guess diagnosing, identifying what's in the way so they can clear it if they choose to do so.
So it's all about removing the blocks. So everything ends up manifesting a kind of an energetic block, or if you have things that are physical. For instance, my sister, she had a cyst on her foot. She'd had it for years and years and years. And I was living in New York at the time, and she was in Connecticut, and she was, having some struggles, and she asked me for Reiki just for on other things, emotional stresses and whatnot. I said, okay. I drew a little picture of her, a little stick figure, and labeled it Mona, and when I did the session, I told her, okay, I explained to her how to just prepare herself and relax and whatever. And so I usually do a consultation before. So if it's a distance, I'll get on the phone with somebody just to make that connection. And then, okay, I'll call you when it's all done. You just relax and do the thing. So I was doing Reiki on her distance like that, a couple sessions. And then I went home for a weekend, and I was with her, and I did another Reiki session in person with her. And she, at this point, Mona's, if you know anything about Mona, she's an early riser, and she goes to bed early too. She's on a strict schedule, and I'm the night owl. So she had fallen asleep. It must have been too late. Must have been past her bedtime, because she fell asleep. And I think even during the session, okay. And a lot of people do. It's not uncommon. But I think because she was asleep and totally open and totally relaxed, it was a great session. And I saw her foot kick. Really, really hard. And she was completely asleep, And I was like, oh, okay, interesting. Just did the thing. And the next day, it must have been the summer, because we were laying out on the deck, and we were talking, and she starts to point out, and she's like, yeah, my cyst. And then she's looking all over for it. And she's like, oh my God, I think you made my cyst go away. And it was just really cool. It's like that kind of validation too for me, because I'd never experienced anything like that, where, you can really have some physical changes from these energy practices, as well as emotional and mental.
So what's each chakra responsible for?
So if you start at your root, usually the root chakra is red. And that one is your grounding. It's your safety, your security. That's that like primal just being here on the earth, right? The sacral is the orange, which is the next one. So your root chakra is like at the coccyx bone, and then at the navel is kind of your sacral, and that's orange. And that one's really that place of creativity and sexuality, right? Also the idea of money and all of that. Your solar plexus is then yellow, and it's right, right under the rib cage. And that's your, like the will of the warrior, your confidence and your willpower. It's really that fire that's in your gut. That's that place of confidence.
Yeah.
And if it's not confident, that one's going to be really murky. And I think a lot of people, for the most part, are in their lower chakras. If you are, constantly worried about all of these earthly issues, that lower triangle, those lower three are where you are going to be concentrated most of all. And if you're not allowing that energy flow, if you're blocked there, then those higher chakras, which relate to higher wisdom and everything, are going to be blocked. You're not going to have that energy flow. So you're not going to be as open.
Yeah.
Right? So it's really important to maintain this balance and this energy flow of them all. Your heart chakra, obviously in the center of your chest, is that bridge between the two. And it's that place of love and compassion and generosity. And then you go to your throat chakra, and the heart is green, and then you go to your throat chakra, and that's that blue. And that is actually, not only is it how you express yourself and everything, but it's also that point of manifestation. We talk about the word and, God's word, and then, there was the word. In the beginning, there was a word. And it really is when you say what it is that you want in your life, it's that first point where you've actually put it into existence and you've made it a reality.
Okay.
Right? So it's that point of manifestation. And then you go to your third eye, and that's your Ajna chakra, which is indigo. And that's the place of vision. So, when you meditate, you're usually looking out through your third eye, trying to create that image of what you want for your life. It's also the place where we hold our addictions. So, addicts that might be cloudy for addicts, place where if you're depressed, that might show up there as well. And then the last one is the crown chakra, which could be violet, could be rainbow, could be, white, gold, however it's depicted. And that's your connection to the divine. That's that opening. So those are the main 7 that are really recognized.
Okay.
So that's just a quick.
And when you're working through Reiki, do you identify one or a couple to work on specifically, or do you, help somebody expose where the block is from one chakra to the next?
So a lot of times for me, I can feel I'll feel a pull over them, and I'll feel different heat changes. And also I use a pendulum to see the direction of how it spins, to see whether a chakra is closed, if it's just a little bit maybe murky, if there's a little bit of pain there, or if it's completely open. Also the speed and whether they're all equally balanced, that I can usually feel with my hands, depending on how high or low it is. And I try and bring them all back into balance. And I try and use my intuition too. There are things that will come to me. One time in particular, I was working on this woman, and I heard a voice as I'm working. And I think as I was getting to her heart, all of a sudden I heard a voice, say something that in words I would never use. Like, "Oh, it's all right, my sweet girl," or something like that. And I said it. And I looked like a man in my brain. So I said it to her, and she started crying because it was something that her father would have said to her.
Oh, man.
So I was like, oh, okay. I'm still learning, and I'm still opening my gifts. So I've learned, though, just kind of say what comes.
Sure.
And if it resonates with the person, then, it was meant for them.
You're in there, yeah.
Yeah. So, it's for every practitioner is going to be different. They're going to have different gifts. Some are going to be more intuitive. Some are really going to have sight and be able to see what's going on. Others will feel the changes. Yeah. But then what it comes down to, it's really the experience of the person on the table. What are they noticing in their bodies? What are the physical things that they're feeling? What are the images that are going through their minds? How do they feel afterwards?
Yeah.
For somebody who hasn't gone to a chakra or a Reiki session, how if you're trying to do the self work in a sense before you actually attend that, is there practices that somebody can do when they're as a self-development piece to start working on finding their center, their balances?
Sure. I would tell anybody meditation, above all, just, try and just sit with yourself. And a lot of people get scared if they've never meditated before. They get nervous by the words. It's just like, oh, this big thing. And if my mind's going a million miles an hour, meditation is just kind of sitting there and becoming aware of yourself, and it's also it's an opportunity for you to listen. What's coming through? Even if you've got a million thoughts going through your head, start to actually look at them and just analyze them and just say, oh, okay, hi, I see you. Okay, I don't really need you right now. All right, I'll talk to you later. Come back. But don't beat yourself up if those feelings keep coming through. It's a practice, and it'll happen after a while where you get a little bit more still. But just recognize that. Maybe even just go back and focus on your breath. Breathe. What I try and do before every session, especially because I don't know if people have prepared themselves or whatever, you don't have to. Come to a session and we sit and we talk about what's going on. I want to just get to know you. I want to establish that rapport. And you tell me kind of what you've been feeling, why you're there in the first place, because I want to know what brought you, and if you've got any health issues or whatever. And then you get on the table. I play. It's interesting. I just finished collaborating on a meditation album last year.
Nice.
So I play that, and the guy that I worked with on that, he's a really, really a young, really talented composer, and he studied each of the chakras. Yeah. So all the frequencies and the tones and everything. So each track is specifically for each one of those chakras, and it takes you on a journey. So I play that for my clients, and I'll tell you, every single one of them, they're very relaxed because I can hear the change in their breathing. But yeah, you don't have to go crazy. You just come and be open, and if you really want to receive the healing, you will.
That's interesting.
Nice.
I found the hardest part for me, like when I was trying meditation, last year or 2 years ago, something like that, was calming the mind, because like all these thoughts would flood in. I'm like, damn, I'm not meditating. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like I found like when I started playing like a single song,
Sure.
so I'm a big hip hop dude, so if like I start singing the lyrics, but if I listen to too many songs, like I start singing with them. But if I played a single song over and over, it would become it puts me in a trance in a sense. Have you had to experience that?
The monotony kind of.
Yeah, it fades away. So I'm not like singing with the artist anymore. Yeah. But I'm like in that zone. I'm dialing in. So I always find like the energy practice is like, ever since we talked to Julie Farha, I've been super interested in like, I guess like how it feels to be that in tuned with yourself. Because a lot of times it's just like, I'm the analytical guy. I'm just thinking. Yeah. But I'm not actually like reflecting on how I feel. So I just find that super interesting when you're talking about the practice of like unlocking these different energy zones or chakras. Is crazy to me.
Yeah. Well, it's cool that you said that, because what you're basically doing is creating a mantra for yourself. And so both my sister and I took Kundalini yoga teacher training. Okay. And in Kundalini yoga, we combine mantra, chanting and breath work and the movement. We combine all of these things and the meditation all into one practice. So even when we're meditating, we could be doing a meditation where we're actively chanting and saying these mantras over and over and putting ourselves into a trance. And after a period of time, you're just completely zoned out. Like when you're just like you found, when you're saying these words and you're in that, you're just there. There's nothing else. You don't have time for these other thoughts to come through.
Right.
That's
interesting.
That sounds so much like what I experienced on this plant medicine psilocybin retreat. Once we drank the tea, took the medicine, right? And I was on my ride. They had music playing, right? And the music kind of set the tone for the journey. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it was everything from like fucking acoustic Metallica to primitive drums and beats. You know what I mean? But it was all like we were talking about yesterday, like that RPM. BPM, beats per minute thing. Yeah. Like, it was kind of just setting the tone for where you're at in the journey. And my mantra then, through that experience, was "Show me peace." Yeah, and it was fucking crazy, right? Like I'm tripping balls, you know what I mean? But when things got really, really rough, our shaman told me I was gonna have a really hard time, and I did. But when things got really turbulent, he was like, "Come back to your mantra," and like you're talking about it, you don't have time for all the noise, and it brings you back to center and establishes that clarity. Yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah. So like I've experienced exactly what you're talking about, and exactly what you're talking about. You know what I mean? That's cool. Super dope. Yeah.
That's funny. I wanted to try an ayahuasca ceremony.
We've been talking about that shit
know?
for years.
I mean, I've never done anything more than pot, you know,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I don't like feeling out of control of myself.
No.
So
I hear you.
it's an interesting thing because you don't really have control over where this takes you. Like,
Right.
I think when you and I talked about it, you had this whole, you came in and you were like, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to get this out of it. And it took you somewhere
Ruined it.
else.
Yeah.
Shaman ruined that shit. He was like, that's not why you're here. I'm like, yes, it is. He's like, no, it's not.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Oh man, I was like, I went there, you know, because everything had been explained to me about that setting and using this specific medicine is all about clarity, right?
Yeah.
And helping you define for yourself what the next move is, right? And so I go there and I'm like, okay, I want to know what's next for my life and the gym and the family and all that good stuff. And the shaman's like, when was the last time you had a good night's sleep? And I was like,
Called
man,
you
I
out.
can't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very humbling. I was like, I haven't slept through the night in probably years, you know?
Wow.
He's like, you're restless. Like, you're not at peace. And I was like, okay. So he's like, this is your mantra. Show me peace. Right.
Nice. Yeah.
And at that time, I was really battling the balance between growing the business and growing my family and playing the two against each other in my mind. The business isn't doing what I wanted to do because I have obligations at home. I'm not super happy at home because the business isn't doing what it's supposed to be doing. Right. And playing the two against the middle. And what manifested in that experience when I said, show me peace, was my wife and my son. I didn't have my daughter at the time. My wife and my son. And it was like, okay, message received. Get your fucking priorities together. You know, what's really important. And like, that was the line in the sand. And it's been, you know, nothing but progress ever since. You know what I'm saying?
That's amazing. Yeah.
And, you know, so like, as far as plant medicine is concerned, like, that is literally the only circumstance I will entertain the idea. Like, the recreational, like, self-discovery, I don't have the guided experience to fuck with that shit on my own. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Bring me the shaman, bring me the pro, like, and we can sit down and do the damn thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. So I'm right there with you on that, you know? But yeah, no, I think that the removal of self and using plant medicine to do it, you know, is, you know, under the right circumstance with the appropriate guidance, can be immensely powerful.
Yeah.
You know, and really deconstructing the barriers that you have either consciously or subconsciously self-imposed for yourself. And 9 times out of 10, what I've experienced in the dialogue that we've engaged in, it's all self-imposed. You know, it's not really a physical limitation. You know, that's not really in the physical world, in reality, in your way. You decided that that's your barrier.
Yes.
You know, whether you did it consciously or subconsciously, and being able to identify that and put systems in place to knock it down.
Yeah.
You know, like, I know for sure in my case, minus that psilocybin experience, I wouldn't have been able to do it.
Yeah.
Because I can't sit down with self in my mind and get there on my own.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody's got a different way that they're going to come to this. You know, for me, it's meditation. Although I think I'd want to try. You know, I think it'd be experience.
Shaman John, I'll give you his number.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it just, I think whatever works for you to be able to get in tune with yourself. I think at the end of the day, like, we all need to have that self-awareness, and we all need to be able to find that way of getting in tune with who we are, because otherwise we end up blaming everybody else, everything else, for everything that goes on in our worlds. And you know, I talk about it in the book too, about recognizing your blocks and your triggers. You know, and I think that's part of the self-awareness, is like, why is this a trigger for you? Why is this block here? What in your past has what experience have you drawn on to now create that thought, that image, that emotion that's tied to it. You know, and only when you identify it, it's like only when you know that there's a problem can you fix it.
Right.
You know, so
Sure.
that's part of what that is. You know.
Along the journey of revealing your path or
Yeah.
like who you are,
Yeah.
did you ever have mentorship or was it all self-discovery for you?
I mean, I've had my mentors are all over. I mean, for me, teachers are everywhere. I mean, if I said I did it alone, it would be a complete lie.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think anybody does anything alone. A lot of it was self-discovery because I am so analytical, and I think a lot of us here are. And maybe for type A's, we are like that. But I was only able to do that based on the wisdom of other people. And, you know, the idea of guru is that there's a guru in everyone and everything around you. If you look for the signs, if you look for the teachers, you know, I had, you know, whether it was healers, I always say I go to spiritual people and psychologists rather than psychologists. I spent so much time in psychologists' offices and realized that for me, my spiritual path, I needed people who spoke my language.
Right.
So for me, it was a lot of mediums. There were a couple women I went to in Connecticut. So for me, it was a little bit more of a clinical setting, but with intuitive healers, who I worked with, and they helped me kind of get through some of my own inner workings and, like, you know, figure out what some of those things meant, and then kind of tie it in with the spiritual, which made sense because we're holistic, we're multidimensional beings. So I had to take a holistic approach. And then just, I think I just kept my eyes and ears open. When other people would say things, or when people would kind of make me check myself, you know, I had to go, all right, you know, you're right, you know, and I had to turn the mirror back on myself. So yeah, I think it was a combination of just being open to guidance from anywhere it was coming from, and being open to the signs, you know.
That's super interesting.
So.
I think like that's been resonating with me a lot lately, is like the intuition piece, because I find that I'm getting better at it, but I haven't always listened to that part of myself. It's just like, just going through the motions, like, okay, it doesn't fit the goal. Yeah. So why even listen to this shit? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So like, especially talking to women, like feeling that feminine energy and how you're just able to like soften the mood and not be so just abrupt. You know what I mean? And just, it gives me a different perspective on understanding how listening to the body is helpful, more helpful than listening to the mind, or like the logical mind, so to speak. You know what I mean? Sort of playing in that abstract. Super interesting to me.
Yeah.
Are you a huge, do you sense auras and stuff like that? Like, do you see colors and auras from an intuition standpoint?
You know, I not quite yet. There have been times where I think I just have to do more practice of that. There have been times where I've stood in the mirror and, you know, I'm practicing, and I can make out a little bit of the color. But again, it takes practice to kind of just get in tune with that. What I can see is energy. I mean, usually I can see.
I was glowing when I walked in the coffee shop.
With the crit blue.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think a lot of us, maybe not a lot of us, but some of us can, you know, we can see that kind of energy field that's around people. And especially when people who are speaking and are really, you know, energetic and passionate about what they're saying, you know, you can kind of see that almost like halo around them. That I can see pretty often. And before I didn't know what it was, and now I know what it is. Yeah. But I don't, you know, it's not like I'm walking around and, you know, oh, that guy's purple and that guy's blue. And, you know, no.
Cool.
Yeah.
So what, now that Reveal is out there, I want everybody to see this. So now that it's physical, it's real. Where do you want it to go? Not where do you want to go with it, but where do you want it to go? Whose hands does it need to be in?
So I wrote this for my teen self. I wrote this for my adolescent, young adult self. I wrote it for the young professional trying to figure out where the hell they're supposed to be going when everybody's told them they rode the conveyor belt, right, of the mainstream, and now they're supposed to be making it in life and know who they are and know all these things. So, you know, I think that it holds true for so many people, from like teens on up. But I think more than anything, I really like it to get in the hands of, young people during those the ages when they're really impressionable and when they really need the tools, because I find that we're doing so much Band-Aid fixing of broken adults. It's like, why are we not doing the prevention when we're younger, and just giving our teens the tools? So this is what this book and this workbook is. It's the tools, hopefully. So I've written it like a program. It can be done kind of like a 24-week, 24-week course. But it can be adapted. So I'd love to get it in the hands of teachers, do, continuing ed elective type workshops, and courses. I think that it could speak to rehab facilities, anybody who's trying to start over, people who've gotten out of relationships or even just trying to pick themselves up from that. Because depending on how long the relationships were, those could be really debilitating. I know, when you leave somebody who you've been with for that long, I mean, it's almost like a death because you're starting over. And in some cases, you have to just cut it off.
Yeah.
And you're mourning the loss of that person and you're picking up and starting over. So, there's a lot that can help you rebuild. So, I'd love to see it in schools and rehab facilities more than anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's huge.
What are you doing now that this is done to empower your journey?
To empower my journey.
Because so much of your self progress is in here.
Yeah.
Right? But this is done now. So what are you doing to continue that
Phase
process?
2, baby.
Yeah.
Phase 2.
Yeah, there you go.
So in here, I actually talk about 2 phases.
Okay.
So your first phase is reveal yourself. Well, now what are you going to do? You've figured out what your tools are, what your skills are, all this talent that you have. What are you going to do with it? And it's kind of like, all right, you have all this knowledge. If you sit on it, you're being selfish. So it's like, you're the only one. You are unique. Nobody can do what you do. Nobody can, be you. You have to go and be yourself. So, phase 2 is about contributing to the world. We find fulfillment and we better ourselves by helping others. And so for me, it's, okay, get this book out into the right hands. So there's going to have to be, me getting out in front of people and kind of, whether it's helping to teach or speak or whatever. I'm kind of working on the marketing strategy now. But also part of what Reveal the Realness is going to become, I've laid the foundations for this kind of organizational type piece where I've already gotten a lot of, young college students and young professionals who want to be part of this kind of movement. And what we're doing is creating a platform, and you can see it on revealtherealness.com. It's basically a way to organize. So people can buy the book and then, go through the process themselves, or they can become part of what I'm calling vibrations. And the idea is to create these like chapters almost in different areas, wherever, around the world, in colleges, anywhere in towns. And the idea is they're kind of like meetup groups, right? So in these vibrations, they're run by Reveal the Realness crew members, and you can get goal coaching on your own goals, but you can also be working towards helping in your communities. So each vibration will have a cause that is the thing that they're working to, like this big cause that they're working to over the course of the year. And they can do smaller volunteer kind of events. The whole thing is volunteer. And in the meantime, it's always the groups coming together to help each other stay motivated and pursue the goals, and kind of have people holding you accountable.
Yeah.
Okay. What is it that you want in your life? How are you living a big life? And so you've got the support of the group, and then you're also doing things together, whether you're going hiking one day or you're going to, a soup kitchen or, whatever it is, and fundraising for your big goal. So the idea is to kind of just create this platform of giving and also self-improvement. So it's constantly this like give and take, and that energy, just keeping the energy flow.
That's
Nice.
dope. That's dope.
That's where it's
Hell
going.
yeah. Okay.
I love
All
that.
right.
So-
And where can everybody
Thanks.
connect with you and also connect with Reveal and buy the product?
So revealtherealness.com. for the book and all of what's coming for that. And then for me, you can go to leilaamani.com. And that's where you'll see the stuff on Reiki. And we've got a women's retreat coming up in June.
Yes.
So everybody who attends, it's an intimate retreat. So these are kind of two separate things, but reveals crossing over because this is really my life coaching piece.
Yeah.
So it's a women's retreat. It's all about empowerment, and what we're looking for, it's only 12 individuals. So it's pretty exclusive, and we'll be in like Okemo Mountain. We'll be in Vermont. We've got a beautiful house. It's this gorgeous cabin. It's really a luxury place.
I've seen it.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we're doing the retreat there. I have a raw food chef. She's also a Qigong instructor. She's an herbalist. She's amazing. We have a yoga instructor. And then myself. And we're going to be ziplining down Okemo Mountain. And we're going to do a lot of these activities during summer solstice to use the power of the sun and just, give everybody just that will to keep going with their goals. And so.
Well
really
done.
excited.
Dope.
Thank you.
Yeah.
There's a lot. So that's why I'm crazy right now. But
if there wasn't, it wouldn't be dope.
Exactly.
Anything we can do to support, you have us. So
Thank
that's
you.
awesome. Looking
Thank
forward to
you.
hearing about
I'd be
all of that.
disappointed if there was no phase 2, man.
Bro.
Holy shit. That's awesome.
I'm dressing up to go to the female thing. Who's this?
Put a wig on.
Yeah.
Well, maybe down the road we'll do one with guys too.
That's
but
what's up.
Right
That's
now it's
cool.
for the ladies.
Congratulations.
That's awesome.
Thank you. And you guys too. I mean, congratulations on your book. Congratulations on this podcast. I mean, this is awesome. The caliber of people you have coming on is amazing. And, the energy you're spreading, the messages that you guys are sending, we've got to hear more of that.
Oh, appreciate
So
it.
appreciate you.
Thank you guys for having me on.
Maybe
I'm
we'll go
humbled
to 2
and
episodes
blessed.
a week. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, keep rocking it. You're killing it.
Thank
Excited to see
you.
everything
Well
you have
done.
going.
Yeah,
Thank you.
proud of everything. Glad to see that this is finally
Real.
a tangible
Let's take a look at that
product.
cover again.
Yeah, here you go.
Let me see this. Peeps. Gotta get it.
Gotta have it. Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah. No.
I'm over throwing the product, man.
It's just jumping. It's got so
That's
much energy.
Good stuff.
Well done.
That's fire.
Awesome.
That's
No,
awesome. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
I love the fact that it's not just anecdotal. There's application behind the education.
Yeah, there's 31 activities in there.
Okay.
And a
Nice.
way, in part of it, there's a way to track your meals, your hydration, journaling, the whole
Okay.
bit. So
holistic.
the holistic.
Yes.
Yeah.
I need to set when we get off the mic. We need to set up that Reiki session.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Want to do that.
Yeah.
So
I'm down
Get your first one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Pop your Reiki chair.
I'm ready. My head explodes. Like, what the hell?
before you get too far into phase 2, we really appreciate you taking the time to sit down with
Yeah,
us
absolutely.
Thank you.
and reveal the realness with us.
Thank you,
stuff.
guys.
Hashtag reveal.
Hashtag
Hashtag
reveal.
reveal.
All right. So thank you so much
Thank
for
you,
being
guys.
here today. And everybody out there in Feed Me, Fuel Me land, make sure you get out there and support everything that Leila has going on. Check out revealtherealness.com and put yourself through the process. I'm sure, I have no doubt that it'll be enlightening for you. So do that. And until next time, guys, Feed Me, Fuel Me.
See ya.
Peace.